Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Couch Counsel. My name is Andy Sherrod. I'm here today with my partner, Jaime Wisegarver. We're both members of Hirschler's employment law team. In our last episode, we had a discussion about mandatory versus voluntary vaccination programs. Wide-ranging topic, and so we thought we'd continue it today, get into the weeds a little bit more about how you implement your vaccine program. I guess as a starting point, Jaime, my first question is, can you require an employee to tell you whether they're vaccinated or not?
It's a good first question, Andy, and the answer is yes. The EEOC has said that this question does not constitute a medical inquiry, and so you can ask it without running afoul of the ADA. However, I caution you that if the answer to that question is no, the company should not ask the follow-up question, which is why not, as that would likely be considered a disability-related inquiry according to the EEOC.
Yep, that sounds right. I know there's been a lot of regulatory guidance on vaccines and implementing vaccine policies in the workplace. What has OSHA had to say?
Yeah, just earlier this month, OSHA issued some workplace recommendations that align with the CDC's guidance, which is helpful. OSHA has suggested that employers consider adopting policies that require workers to get vaccinated or alternatively to undergo regular COVID testing. This would be in addition to mask wearing and social distancing, which are also still encouraged for unvaccinated folks. OSHA recommends that all workers, vaccinated or unvaccinated, continue to wear masks in high traffic areas where the risk of transmission is greater. And also the OSHA's guidance aligns with the CDC's recommendation that urges employers to encourage folks to get vaccinated and to, of course, instruct anybody that tests positive for the virus to stay home from work and to continue implementing physical distancing and masking policies as so many companies have been doing for quite some time. So, Andy, we know that employers can require COVID testing, but can they require employees to pay for the COVID testing?
That's a great question, Jaime, and one that I've been getting more and more as folks roll out these vaccination programs. And I would say, generally speaking, if your company is requiring the testing, your company should pay for the testing. A couple different legal bases for this approach here. The EEOC guidance explains that if, certainly in a situation where you're requiring that the employee get a test at a particular provider of the employer's choosing, the employer needs to pay for the test in that situation. Also, there is Virginia law that says that, if an employer requires a medical examination, the employer needs to pay for that medical examination if it's a condition of employment. So, in a required testing situation, the safer course is certainly to pay for the tests that you're requiring of your employees. There might be situations where that general rule won't apply, but I would urge companies that are considering as requiring employees to pay for their own COVID tests to seek counsel before they do that, because that can be a tricky one.
Okay, so what about the time that employees are spending to go get testing? Is that something that the employer has to pay for?
Yep. So if you're requiring your employees to get COVID tested, you should pay them for the time they spend getting the required COVID test. The DOL guidance on this is pretty clear. Certainly during work hours, if you're sending someone to get a COVID test and it's required, then you should pay them for that. Even in off hours, if the test is required and is integral to their work for your company, that's a situation where you also need to pay the employee. So that's just, if it's required time, pay them. Because certainly you don't want to get into a wage and hour claim by virtue of the vaccine policy that you're trying to implement.
Andy, I know you know that the American Rescue Plan Act continued the voluntary leave of the FFCRA. And I know that we've had some clients ask, whether they can choose to provide the voluntary FFCRA leave to vaccinated employees, but not to unvaccinated employees. How have you answered that question?
Yeah, Jamie, that's an interesting topic. And just to refresh folks' memory, I mean, the FFCRA was one of the first programs that Congress rolled out at the beginning of the pandemic. It actually expired at the end of last year. It required covered employers to provide paid leave in certain COVID-related situations. It's purely voluntary now. Up until September 30th, folks can still get a tax credit if they provide that voluntary leave. After that, there's not even a tax credit available. So, but there is, under the American Rescue Plan, an anti-discrimination provision in the law that says if you're going to implement this voluntary leave and take the tax credit, you can't distinguish between employees on certain categories. Now, vaccinated versus unvaccinated is not one of the specified categories in that anti-discrimination provision. But whenever you've got an anti-discrimination provision baked into a law, you want to be careful when you are, distinguishing between similar folks on the basis of, one category versus another, vaccinated versus unvaccinated. Now, there could be an argument that someone could make, even if it's not successful, that somehow runs afoul of the anti-discrimination provision. So I'd be careful about implementing that type of a rule.
That is sound advice on a tricky question. To our viewers, if you have other questions concerning implementing a vaccine policy or returning to work, please reach out to Andy or myself here at Hirschler, and we would be happy to assist. Thanks for listening.